Good evening, everyone. Welcome to College Bound Junior Night. My name is Megan Pinkston. I'm the Director of Guidance here at the high school. We're very happy to welcome you tonight to our program. Joining us this evening, we have two highly respected admission personnel who we're going to start our evening with. First, we have Joe DiCarlo. Joe is the Dean of Enrollment and Director of Admissions at Worcester State University. And we have Drew Carter. Drew is the Deputy Director of Admissions at the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester. So we're thrilled to have them. They are a great resource for families going through the college application process. And we are going to be able to ask some questions of them about their school specifically, the college process in general, their perspective, having, 20 years plus experience in the field, give or take. So they're sort of a wealth of knowledge for us. And then there's going to be an opportunity at the end for a Q&A. Then we'll have a brief intermission while we transition, and then my counseling department will be kind of going through the college application process, soup to nuts, with all of you. All right, before we get started with our Q&A with our panel, I also just want to take a moment to thank Debbie Conti and Michelle Fallis for coordinating all of this. They are our administrative assistants in the guidance office, and they put all of this together. And it literally wouldn't happen without them, and they're tremendous at making sure all the details are worked out. So thank you both. All right, let's get started. So first I want to talk a little bit about college search in general, so how we find colleges, all of that good stuff. Can you both share a little bit about your school and what you look for in applicants whom you're admitting?
So I'm Drew. I work at Holy Cross. Holy Cross is a small school of 3,000 kids. So we tend to attract students who picture themselves sort of enjoying a pedestrian experience in college, walking to class, walking to the dining hall, walking to the library, walking to the gym. We also tend to attract students who picture themselves in smaller classrooms in college, 15 to 20 students. We're also a residential school, so we tend to attract students who picture themselves living on campus for their entire experience of their 4 years in college. So that tends to be the kind of student. Now, the nice thing about New England is there's lots of great small colleges and universities within New England, and a lot of them have a lot of people. We tend to be one thing that differentiates us from many of the other great small schools in New England is that we're in a big city. We're in the great city of Worcester, second biggest city in New England. So I think we also tend to attract students who picture themselves having a kind of a life off campus while they're in college, whether it's internships or community service or maybe it's just pizza. That tends to be the kind of students who's attracted to Cross, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Hi everyone, to tell you a little bit, happy to be here tonight. Look forward to hopefully having the chance to answer some of your questions. Know that this time can be really exciting, but it can also be filled with some anxiety as well. Lots of great options. The admissions process can be somewhat clear, but it can also be clouded with a little bit of mystery, I think, unintended mystery in terms of how we do our work. But hopefully after tonight you'll have a little bit more clarity on how the admission process works and what some of the options are out there for you. Worcester State, we are a public university, so we're part of the Massachusetts State University system. You've got the UMass campuses, and then you've got the 9 state universities, and we fall within that tier. So we're very similar to schools like Westfield, Fitchburg, Framingham, to just name a few. We're medium sized. We have about 5,000 undergraduates on our campus. We also have a graduate school with about 1,000 students as well. Our student to faculty ratio is on the smaller side, but probably about 16 to 1. We primarily serve students from Massachusetts. Being a public regional serving institution, the bulk of our students are from Massachusetts. We house about 40% of the students on our campus. We do offer a traditional 24/7 residential experience, focusing our academics on the liberal arts and sciences. Some of our more popular programs are in biology, business administration, criminal justice. We have a really competitive and highly regarded nursing program, as well as many other programs in the health sciences. We were founded as a teacher's college, so many of our students will study within our education program as well. Like Holy Cross, we're located directly in the city of Worcester. Holy Cross is on the east side of the city. We're on the west side of the city. And like Holy Cross, our students really see the city of Worcester as an extension of our campus for things to take advantage of through academic offerings, internships, employment opportunities, opportunities to explore the city through the cultural events, through the art and theater, music scene, huge restaurant scene in the city of Worcester. We're also obviously really excited about the opportunities that Fuller Park allows for our students both socially as well as, again, through opportunities for employment and internships. On our campus, we really look for students that want to engage in the campus community. So we want them to be good students academically, ready to take the challenge of going on and pursuing a four-year bachelor's degree. But we also want them to get involved in our campus community as well through our clubs and organizations, our athletic programs, taking advantage of our honors program, internships, undergraduate research opportunities, service learning. So we want students to really be prepared and willing to take advantage of the full college experience. College is really a transformational time, and so we want students that are going to come prepared to really take full advantage of everything that there is to offer, so that hopefully when they graduate from our university, they can look back and see that they've really grown as an individual, grown academically, intellectually, but also socially and emotionally, and set themselves up for success as they move on either to an advanced degree or perhaps employment.
Great, thank you. As students and families begin their college search, what advice do you have for them on how to initiate kind of building that college list and ensuring that there's some balance in their college list?
We've got big voices.
Can you all hear us okay in the back?
Here. Why don't we trade? I'll take that one.
So this one's turned up. All right. So the question was about building a list, right? Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the roadblock that happens early in the timeline, which is I think if you're a current high school junior, where you're at right now, is that I think sometimes there's too much pressure put upon that first list and about where you should start looking, what sorts of colleges you should start looking at first. I think the most important thing is to start looking, to start researching online, and if possible, start visiting schools in person. Again, I'm going to reinforce the idea that these first few college search or college visits shouldn't be so precious. It is fine to make an informal visit to a college campus. It's fine to make a formal visit where you take a campus tour, maybe an information session, but worrying less about the specific school and whether it's a perfect match for you, I don't think that's important now. What's most important is exposure. Exposure to different types of colleges, big, small, public, private, urban, suburban, rural, to try to get a sense of what your preferences might be and the variety of options available. So my advice about starting is to literally just start, to don't think about this start as being so precious, and to get exposure to college campuses in person as early as you can so that you can start to identify your own preferences. And then you can start to really hone in on schools where you're going to want to make a more deliberate campus visit.
In going on those campus visits down the road, what do you suggest that families and students focus on or think about or look for?
So just to repeat, so in terms of the campus visit, what should you sort of consider as part of that campus visit, sort of some of the takeaways that you want to think about on your campus visit? I think a lot, I would say that probably for me, the biggest thing is just sort of the feeling that you get when you leave, right? Did you feel comfortable? Were you impressed with the facilities? Did you notice how community members interacted with each other? Just sort of the overall general sense or feeling that you get. A lot of students that I talk to at Worcester State, when I tell them what do they like most about Worcester State, they almost immediately tell me they just liked the way the campus felt. It was a good size for them. It was easy to navigate. It felt comfortable. They were impressed with the facilities. facilities. And it just left them with this feeling of comfort. And I think that says a lot, because if you are comfortable at the place that you're going to call home for the next 4 years, you're going to be more likely to set yourself up for success and be open to new experiences, new opportunities, and generally have a much better college experience. So you'll get that pretty soon once you're on the college campus and you walk around. You'll be able to kind of just close your eyes and envision yourself being there as a student. Did you like the architecture of the building? I mean, some of the things seem a little bit silly, but did the architecture of the building speak to you? Did the location, did the surrounding neighborhood, did you feel comfortable? Did you feel safe? Did you enjoy what you saw? Was the campus well maintained? Was there any trash? Was it well landscaped? Those are all the types of things that you might not necessarily think of, but can certainly speak a lot to how you feel there, and your general sense of comfort, and how you generally will feel as you really explore the next 4 years during your time there.
Thanks. I'm going to shift a little bit and ask some questions about the actual college application. So what college application deadlines do your schools have? And how do you advise students on choosing what type of application deadline is right for them, and the pros and cons of going early versus regular and so on?
So at Holy Cross, we offer 2 different applications. We get the bulk of our applications through regular decision. It's a deadline that's coming up in a few days for us. We receive a smaller group of applications through our early decision round, and we have 2 different rounds of early decision. Early decision is a binding application. That's where if you submitted an early decision application to a school like Holy Cross or someplace else, you've committed to enroll at that school if admitted. So you only have 1 early decision application active at a time. That's different than early action, which is very popular, which lots of schools offer. That is earlier as well, but early action is non-binding. So you can apply to as many schools as you want early action, and you're not bound to enroll if you're admitted at any of those schools. So where you're going to apply, what schools you're going to apply to, that's a great family journey you go on. And once you've sort of late summer, early fall, you start to narrow in on that list of schools that you're going to apply to, then you have to start to think, for each of those schools, which round will you apply through? That is a conversation where you need to include your school counselor. If you can imagine applying to college as a triangle, you are at one point, the college is at the second point, and North Andover High School is at the third point. The only person in the middle of that triangle is your school counselor. They know your academic record. They have a sense of the history of decisions coming out of that college, and they also have a sense of the history of decisions coming from North Andover High School. It's really important to think about how your application will fit into the pool at that particular college and which round might be best, and the best person to give you advice on that is going to be your school counselor.
I would just add, in addition to early action and early decision, there's also rolling admission. So at Worcester State, we offer early action. That was the non-binding option that Drew talked about. The earlier you apply, the earlier you'll likely hear back with the decision, but you still have up until May 1st to make your final choice, not committing through a binding agreement. Rolling admission also simply just means that basically you apply. Once your application is complete and ready to be reviewed by the admissions committee, they make a decision and then they notify you basically on a rolling basis. So no set deadlines. There's typically a priority application deadline that aligns sometime in the middle to late of the spring with a financial aid deadline, so that then again you can make an informed decision and be able to be prepared to make a final decision by about the May 1st timeframe. So you've got early action, which is non-binding, early decision, which is binding, rolling admission, which is where we're constantly just making decisions and sending those out on a regular basis. Those are typically the 3 ways that you can go about applying to college, and each school is going to offer different types of plans, but generally speaking, those are going to be the 3 that you're going to encounter.
Does your school take into consideration standardized test scores? And if they do not, or if they're optional, what happens if a student chooses to send them?
So I'll just quickly answer. Worcester State, we've been test optional since the fall of 2018. So we're sort of newer, I guess, to it than Holy Cross. So I'm going to let Drew talk more about being test optional. But at Worcester State, we do offer a test optional admission policy and have been test optional for the last few years.
For all the programs?
For all majors, yep.
So we're test optional at Holy Cross since 2004, 2005. So we leave it in the hands of the student to decide whether or not they would like us to consider their standardized testing in the review of their application. If students choose not to submit standardized testing, we don't think about what they might have gotten. We don't assume that their scores were low. We simply don't think about it. I can attest we're sort of in the thick of reading applications right now, and because of volume and the speed required when you read an application, there simply is no time to stop and wonder about things that you don't see in front of you in the student's file. If the student does choose to include standardized testing, then it will be part of our conversation. It will be part of our committee review. It will be part of one of the factors that we look at when we make a decision. But it'll be a small enough part where we could have the very same conversation without that piece and not notice the difference. For as long as we've been test optional, we've been sort of near 50-50 of students who do submit and students who don't submit it, kind of gone back and forth a little bit there, but the acceptance rate tends to be the same for both groups. And certainly since the pandemic, test optional has exploded nationwide. Whether or not you submit scores as part of your application, I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, it's a great conversation to have with your school counselor, because you may choose to submit scores to one school but not another, so it may not just be a blanket answer for you when you end up applying for college.
Thank you. What are the most important factors that students should consider when choosing a teacher to write their letters of recommendation?
That's always a good question. At Worcester State, letters of recommendation are actually optional. They do add value to a student's application. They are considered if the student does choose to submit. But typically, some of the best letters of recommendations that we receive are generally from classes where maybe it wasn't necessarily the class that you had the best rapport with the teacher or you earned the easiest A. It's really the class where you had to kind of buckle down and work really hard to earn that grade that you got. And because that definitely does, that teacher would probably tend to know you really well and know your work ethic and know your desire and motivation to want to do well in that class. It could be one that's tied into an academic interest, but it also could be from a teacher that maybe isn't necessarily tied into an academic interest, where they're going to be able to share with the admissions committee a perspective of you that we're not gathering from other parts of the application as well. Generally you're going to ask a teacher that is going to write a good letter of recommendation, but there are some things to consider when asking who exactly you might want to write that letter of recommendation for you, and it might not always be your first instinct. It might be a teacher that maybe you have to put a little bit more thought into because they're going to give a more interesting perspective, or they might know you in a different capacity than what we might be gathering from other components of your application.
I think the only thing I'll add is just to understand that you're a high school junior right now. You have teachers, many of whom you may ask to write a recommendation. You have an ability to impact what's written in that recommendation, because recommendations really are just filled with observations and anecdotes that they observe, most especially through the second half of junior year. Consider yourself you're buying the groceries and they are the chef. Think about what you want your recommendation to say and then demonstrate those qualities for the second half of your junior year. And that's exactly what your recommendation will say. So it sounds cheesy when I say it, but you actually control what your recommendation says, especially at this point moving forward for the rest of your junior year.
I'm going to shift again and ask some questions about admissions. How do you weigh the various parts of a student's application when making a decision?
So I'll start because our process is probably a little bit more streamlined than maybe what Drew might share. For admission to Worcester State, we primarily focus and place the most weight on the student's academic transcript. That's where, when we look at our data, is the best indicator to gauge the student's likelihood to be successful when they make the transition from high school or from a previous college to our institution. Your demonstration of the work that you're doing in the classroom over 4 years, the grades that you earn, the rigor of the curriculum, the courses you select, how you prepared yourself potentially for your intended major. For us, it provides us with most of the information that we need to consider you for admission. As a state university, there's some admission guidelines that we sort of take into consideration that are provided to us by the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education. They're just guidelines. We're not necessarily strictly held to them, but really it's around academic preparation. The courses that you've completed typically aligns with your high school graduation requirements, so 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 3 years of a lab science, etc. So we do look at the courses that you've completed, and again, we're looking at your overall grade trend as well. We do recalculate your GPA on a 4.0 weighted scale, so we're giving additional weighting for those students that complete honors courses or AP courses. So again, the bulk of our time is evaluating your academic record. For those students that generally have around a 3.0 or higher, they're going to be eligible for admission to Worcester State. There are some programs that have higher admission standards, like our nursing program, but for the most part, a 3.0 is going to make you eligible. Above that, you may be more competitive for our honors program or for a merit scholarship. Below that, we still want to consider students for admission. They might not necessarily have the grades, but they're demonstrating that they've got motivation, they've got academic potential that maybe hasn't been reached yet. And that's really where there could be value in your letters of recommendation and your essay, which aren't required documents for consideration to Worcester State, but again, could add value as we're really trying to look at you as an individual, engage your ability to be successful on our campus academically and socially. But for Worcester State, it's pretty much the academic transcript where we place the most, where we spend the most time and place the most weight in reviewing students for admission.
And at Holy Cross, it's in a lot of ways, it's pretty similar. The student's academic profile is where we start our conversation. And the pieces of the academic profile are what school you attend, what courses you've signed up for, what level of courses you've signed up for, the grades you've earned in those courses, and then should you choose to include it, standardized testing. That is the cake. Everything else in your file is just frosting. Now, at Holy Cross, we like frosting with our cake, so we do like those recommendations, those essays, those interviews, those activities, but we never eat our cake, we never eat our frosting alone. We want to start with a good solid foundation of cake. So that academic profile really is the engine in the college admissions vehicle, and that's going to be true at 99% of schools in the country. And it's the complementary parts can be complementary, like I said, recommendations and essays and interviews and things like that, but the conversation always starts with the student's academic profile.
You must be hungry tonight.
Yeah.
You both touched upon a component, which is the essay. A lot of students sort of hem and haw over, like, what's that perfect essay topic? What will make me stand out? What will kind of make admissions officers remember who I am? What do you guys look for in admissions essays?
This is a great time of year to ask this question because I've read probably 40 or 50 essays today, and the same number yesterday and the day before and the day before. You're going to forget 99% of the advice you receive about the essay between now and when you actually have to write or submit it. And that's probably a good thing because most of the advice you get is bad. It's not from people like Joe and I. It's from people outside of college counseling or college admissions. It's from your uncle at Thanksgiving and your neighbors and people who don't really know what they're talking about. There's no good topics. There's no bad topics. There's certainly no perfect topics. You will write the best essay on the topic that you want to write about. Not the topic you think you should write about, not the topic your older cousin wrote about a few years ago when they got into Clemson, not the topic that the guidebooks say you should write about if you want to major in communications. I promise you, you will write the best essay on the topic that you want to write about, and also not the topic that your parents think you should write about either.
Thanks. Does your schools offer interviews? And if so, what are the roles that the interview plays?
Okay. Worcester State does not offer interviews. Holy Cross does, and I'll say there's a couple of different kinds of interviews out there. There's some schools that offer informational interviews, which really is just a one-on-one conversation between you and a representative from the school, and that's really your opportunity to interview them about the school. That conversation will not become part of your admissions file for the most part. That's called an informational interview. It's not like, the interview part is you interviewing them, okay? Another part is what we offer at Holy Cross, which is an evaluative interview, where it's really us interviewing you. If a school says they offer interviews, that's the default understanding of it. They offer evaluative interviews. That's what we offer at Holy Cross. It's an optional part of our admissions process. It's a chance for us to get to know you, to add sort of a third dimension to your 2D application. It's also an opportunity for applicants or not yet applicants to ask us questions about our school and our admissions process. So at Holy Cross, you don't have to have applied to interview. We do them over the summer. We do the bulk of them over the summer for students who have not yet applied. I'll just say if schools offer interviews, it's a great thing to follow up on. It's a good thing to start thinking about over the summer, the schools you think you might apply to, if they offer interviews, how you get one. It can really add value to your applications. 99.99% of interviews do add value to the application. The only time I've ever seen interviews where they detracted value, it was where the student didn't want to be in that interview, and it was clear that their parents signed them up for that against their will. And in 20 years, I can only remember like maybe 2 or 3 of those. So it's a great thing to follow up on. It's a great chance to really make yourself more than a number, but also to learn more about the college.
Great. We're still seeing some COVID impact. This junior class will still have altered grades from when COVID hit in the spring of their freshman year. How do colleges take into consideration changes of grade, losses of sports season, internships that were meant to be and never happened? How do you guys account for that during this process?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of COVID and how we're still seeing some of the residual impacts of that on students' transcripts and resumes is that, it is just that. We're still seeing those effects, in that it's just important to note that it's not just applicable to one particular high school, right? It's still something that affected the entire world. I think we do realize that COVID can't be an excuse forever, and so it does have, I think, somewhat of an expiration date, but that we still are seeing that we are still seeing pass-fail grades on transcripts. We are still seeing students write about some of the disruptions or how COVID impacted their high school experiences. And so we do continue going into really now, I think, the third admission cycle of making sure that we have that awareness and that, although we are back to some level of normalcy, that we don't completely forget what students have gone through over the past, 3 or 4 years, and that we do need to consider those disruptions and take that into account appropriately within as we consider students for admission. So it's still being considered. It's getting a little bit further away from us. I would say that if we do see a student attribute some of the disruption or some of the challenges that they experienced during COVID that's impacted their grades, again, that sort of rationale is holding a little less weight as we get further along into the junior, senior year. But it's something that we still are considering when we look back at their first and second year of high school.
I'd like to open up the floor to questions if anyone has questions for Drew or Joe. Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for people that are undecided and where they should start looking or how they should start looking?
Recommendations about students who are undecided in terms of their college major and how to maybe start thinking about what to study.
I think we're both liberal arts kids at heart, so we both went to liberal arts institutions, and I mean that's generally a good consideration for students to think about, a school that offers a broad range of academic disciplines. Know that if you are undecided, you shouldn't feel a lot of pressure to necessarily know exactly what you want to major in right now while you're in high school. 50% of the applicants to Worcester State are students who are applying undeclared. Most students in college will probably change their major at least once or twice, especially if they're in sort of a liberal arts institution that allows you through the curriculum to take classes that you've never taken or never been exposed to before. So when you think about college really being this time of academic exploration, it's really common for students to change majors or think they want to major in one thing, end up graduating in another area, or even picking up additional academic programs like a minor or a double major or a concentration. So the important thing to know is that if you don't know right now, that's completely completely okay in most instances, and that there's lots of support at the college and or our university to help support students that are in a very similar position as well. So if you have the option to come in undeclared or go to a school that doesn't require you to declare a major coming in, know that you're going to be supported through academic advising, through conversations that you're going to have with your faculty, through the curriculum that you're going to be exposed to, typically through something like a gen ed curriculum, where you're going to get the help, you're going to get the support that you need to eventually declare a major and find a program that is going to meet your academic interests, but also start to think about how you might start not only having conversations focused around academics, but also leverage the folks in the career services office to think about what you might be interested in what you want to do with that degree when you graduate. So it's completely normal to not necessarily know what you want to do right now, and unless you're applying to a school that forces you to choose a major, you've got time throughout the rest of high school, if not the first year and a half or so of college, to figure out what you want to major in.
Can you talk about the value of looking at net cost when it comes to the aid packages that families might see that are different across different institutions?
I'll give him the cost question.
Well, I mean, we're admission folks. We're not necessarily financial aid. And I'm a public institution, so our cost is significantly lower than probably, it's very transparent what you have to pay for tuition, fees, room and board. Worcester State, it's around $23,000 all in to live on campus for 4 years. So we consider ourselves to be a pretty affordable option as a public institution, somewhat state supported, and all of our costs are pretty much out there. We don't discount. We offer a very modest merit scholarship program. It's real dollars. You might be getting a $2,000 or $3,000 scholarship from Worcester State because it's relative to our cost of attendance. When you compare us to perhaps a private school that might be 2 or 3 times more than that. It's definitely having the conversation around finances, getting that information should be part of the college search process, just like sort of diversifying your college list in terms of characteristics and selectivity. I always encourage families to think about making sure they have a variety of colleges that are at different cost points as well, because your financial circumstances might change significantly from where you are tonight to where you may be in a year or two, or even when you're students at the college, so that you have that option and flexibility. I'm not sure that I directly answered your question, but sort of did the best I could from what I'm familiar with.
I'll just add, on schools' websites now, they'll have financial aid calculators that will help you estimate cost. Now, there's going to be a million stipulations at the bottom that it can't be completely accurate unless you include accurate information. So there's much more information available now than there used to be. And some of those financial aid calculators will certainly consider family means, and some of them might even include a merit scholarship in that estimate. So there's more information, and I'll just hit again on what Joe said. Having financial balance to your list is just as important as having admissibility balance to your list.
And one other thing that I'll just add that I think we're seeing coming out of the pandemic was a shift to a lot more virtual offerings in terms of programming that you can get from the colleges. So one of the things that we offer at Worcester State is virtual financial aid nights for prospective families and students, where those weren't necessarily offered before the pandemic. So you have more resources and more opportunities to engage on the topic of financial aid, on the topic of paying for college, both within the offered specifically from the colleges or universities you might be considering, but then offered through other resources as well, so that you don't necessarily have to be in person for those meetings.
What do you see as the status of internships, cooperative education, and semesters abroad in the post-pandemic era?
So is your question, what are we seeing for offerings for internship, study abroad at the college level?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can probably speak for Worcester State. I mean, we're pretty much back to as much normalcy as we can be with offering. Our study abroad programs have pretty much resumed, and then students are back to pursuing internships. Most of I would say we're also back with our clinical placements for some of our health science programs, like our nursing program and our occupational therapy program. So I would say we're very much back in business in terms of the availability of programs programs, coming out of the pandemic.
Does it serve a student if you do early action or rolling to get your admission in as soon as possible? If you wait for regular enrollment, are there still the same amount of slots and possibilities for getting into the college?
I mean, that really, really depends upon the school that you're applying to. There's a few schools that Joe and I could mention off the record that are filling an enormous percentage of their acceptances and spaces through their early rounds. There's a few New York Times articles about a few of those schools recently. But then there are actually way more on the other side that are holding off or not filling spaces, not offering a great percentage of their acceptances through early rounds. So it really depends upon the students, the strength of the student. Applying early is not the best option for some students. The late blooming student really needs those first trimester grades senior year to show their true ability, maybe needs that October or November test date to show their best standardized testing. So really it's going to be the school counselor who's going to say, yes, you'd be a good candidate for early at that school. No, you wouldn't be a good candidate for early at this other school. It really is a school by school and sometimes even year by year decision that adds another layer of complication.
Yeah, the only consideration I would add is that I would say in my experience, I don't necessarily think there's a huge advantage or disadvantage of applying early or not applying early for admission, but where you might want to have some consideration is for schools that might have limited housing or a limited merit scholarship program, or they have to cap the number of students they can invite to their honors program. So if you're interested in those types of opportunities and you want to make sure that you can be guaranteed housing, or you really want to strongly be considered for something like an honors program invitation, the earlier you apply, the better your chances may be for getting some of those additional add-ons to your acceptance. But I would say, generally speaking, the acceptance, regardless of when you apply, as long as you meet the qualifications and what they're looking for, you're going to be likely to gain admission, whether you go early or whether you go regular.
Are letters of recommendation accepted and welcome from coaches or staff?
Yeah, I mean, I work at an open submission school, so we'll receive recommendations that are optional. And I'll say my advice with those generally is, it's okay to include supplemental or optional recommendations, not too many. But also, it doesn't really matter who the person is that wrote it. What matters is what they're going to say. I think sometimes people think the recommendation will have impact if it's a person of importance writing it. We generally don't read down far enough in that recommendation to see who wrote it. What we really care about is what they can teach us about that student. Sometimes the best sort of supplemental recommendation is that parent who lives down the road for whom your son or daughter has done some babysitting for, or some gardening, or, sometimes it's the least impressive signature really delivers the most impressive recommendation because it's someone who really knows your child the best. That's what is impressive to us.
How many colleges should really be on the list? Is there some optimum number, or?
I mean, I guess for us, we're going to say our schools and one or two, right? But I would say in the years that Drew and I have been doing this, at one time I don't think there is a magic number. I think at one time students were applying on average to 6 to 8. I think probably now it's closer to 10 to 15. Students are applying to more and more schools because the landscape is, it's become increasingly more competitive, and it's also become increasingly more easier to apply as well as more schools join the Common App, more schools waive the application fee, more schools go test optional. So I think that probably the number of schools that you apply to is going to be very individualized, right? I had my sister applied to, I think, 8 colleges. I applied to 2. I was very late and kind of approached my college search process very different, but I made sure I had a school that I knew I wanted to go to, and I had a school that I would be happy going to if that was my second option. It really depends, I think, upon the family and what you decide is an appropriate number of schools based upon who you're interested in applying to. I wouldn't just apply, just to apply though. You really want to be intentional about the number of schools that you're applying to, because there's a lot of work on your end that goes into putting that application together, but then there's a lot of other people on the other side of that, whether it be in the school counseling office or on the college admissions side that have to, that also will handle that application. So I think being thoughtful and meaningful in determining the number of schools that you want to apply to, again, it's going to vary by family. Some students may need more options than other families, and some students might have a longer list than other students. So I don't think there's a magic number. But we are seeing, I think, probably more and more students, getting into the 10 to 15 number range, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily right or wrong. It's just on average what you're seeing.
Do you expect any number of specific AP courses that a student should take before sending the application?
Oh, right. So, it's a frequent point of debate about what level of courses, how many courses at the higher level, and what's the appropriate course level for a student to take, how that's going to advantage their educational experience, but maybe sometimes more commonly, how it's going to impact their admissions chances. Generally in admissions, we want to see students who have done well in the classroom. So it is not always the best option to take a higher level course. It can be for the student who is interested in pursuing rigor, who can succeed at a higher level, and who can maintain a sense of mental health and wellness while taking on more rigor in their curriculum. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Your school counselor often will be the best person to advise about what the appropriate rigor will be to your curriculum for all of your courses during, whether it's junior or senior year, based upon you, based upon your interests, maybe based upon what your college list might be, and based on sort of their own estimation of what they think might be the right package for you to be submitting to college. So it's a good conversation to have. There's no easy or automatic answer, but typically your school counselor has pretty good advice.
I have a three-part question, and it's related to the admissions. Number one is, it's all related. Number one is there a fixed ratio for in-state versus out-of-state applicants that you admit? Number two is it very similar between state colleges and private colleges? And number three, considering the pandemic, how has international applicants or acceptance for international applicants is changed, gone up, gone down?
For in-state, out-of-state for us, it doesn't make a difference. We're looking for the best applicants. We don't have a cap. We don't have a target ratio. We don't really talk about in-state or out-of-state in our admission process. What was the first part? International. Certainly we saw a dip there in the first year of the pandemic. For our process, we've seen those numbers come back up to sort of pre-pandemic levels. I missed, what was the second part?
Is there a difference between?
And certainly for some state schools, they may have a cap for the number of out-of-state. A lot of the southern state universities have a cap for the number of students that they'll enroll from out-of-state and the number of students that they need to serve in-state, but certainly not in a private school. I'm not sure your sense of the public schools in the area.
No, I mean, I think the admission process, public versus private, operates very similarly. For a public university, we do have a mission of, obviously serving the communities that we're located in. We don't cap, we don't have a specific target number. We're not necessarily limited in our enrollment in that capacity. I would say the biggest difference between my office and Drew's office is that there's probably a little bit more accountability directly to the state in terms of how we are enrolling students. So before I made reference to the Massachusetts Massachusetts Department of Higher Education kind of providing us with admission guidelines that we have to consider in evaluating students, and all of our admission data gets reported to the Department of Higher Education. So there is some level of sort of checks and balance in how we're enrolling and admitting students at the university, but there's no caps that we look at in terms of the number of students that we admit who are out of state versus in state. Now, I can't speak for all state universities. This is just Worcester State, but you are seeing, especially with the UMass campuses, a greater number of out-of-state students that are coming to Massachusetts, and we are also even starting to see that at Worcester State because we've been able to keep our tuition and fee costs at a relatively affordable level, where we may be actually a more cost-effective or more cost-friendly institution than a student from another state's home public university, right? It might be cheaper for them to actually come to Worcester State than it would be to stay in their state and go to their home institution. So we are seeing some of that trend happening as well, which we actually like because it diversifies overall our student body experience. If we're primarily regional and we have more students coming from out of state, that adds value to our overall campus experience.
We have reached the end of this part of the presentation this evening. I want to thank Joe and Drew for your expertise and for coming out tonight. Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break, get set up for the next part, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Yeah. This one's... All right, we'll take our seats and we'll head on to the next part of the presentation this evening. So for the second part of the presentation this evening, our counseling staff is going to sort of walk through the entire college admission process. First, I want to introduce our amazing department. We have some of the best counselors around, which I'm sure you guys know from having them work with your families, but I want to make sure that they all get introduced. So Katie Hebert, Caitlin Regato, Megan Francis, Sarah Coles, Fong Tran, and our intern this year, Daniela Green. So this is just going to be an overview of what we're going to be talking about tonight, all the different components. It's really important that this will be the first and last time that we kind of go through the process, soup to nuts. This process can be really overwhelming. It takes about 1.5 years to complete from now until the time that your student is going to choose a school. So what we try to do is break it down for students and families as much as possible. But that being said, we really think it's important to see the whole big picture as well. So that's sort of an overview of all the things we're going to be covering this evening. So we know this is a big process. We know there's a lot of steps. It's going to be okay. We do this with students and families every year. There's tons of schools out there. You're going to find schools that are right for you, right for your student, and we're going to be able to help you as much or as little as you guys need. The best thing you can do is get started. You want to make a plan. So kind of what Drew and Joe are talking about, getting onto college campuses, just going to see places, talk to different people, get ideas. One of the things I always talk about is if you're going on vacation or you're going to visit family in New York or Pennsylvania, find a school that you're going to drive by. Stop in and drive around campus, take a tour. Just getting some exposure to some different schools is going to be invaluable to start to figure out what you like, what you don't like, and it will start to familiarize you and your student with the process. Have some conversations with other people who have gone through this process. Family members, friends, co-workers, all those different people who might have some insight into some different things.
Thank you. Hi, guys. We're going to talk about standardized testing, arguably the most exciting part of the college application process. Ultimately, the SATs or the ACTs, the two tests that we're going to be talking about, is the first concrete step you can take that has deadlines and something that you can be planning for very early on. So up here, you'll see the information for each exam, the SATs or the ACTs. Or if you're feeling wild and want to try both, you can take both. Whichever test you choose to take, it is super important that you keep your usernames and your passwords somewhere safe. We in the guidance department do not have access to your College Board or your ACT accounts whatsoever. If you've already taken the PSATs, they use the College Board just like the SATs. You want to make sure you're using the same information for both of those exams and eventually APs if you're going that route. If you're taking the ACTs, that is a completely different website, completely different account, but again, that is fully in your control, usernames and passwords, and you will need those when it comes time to sending those scores to the appropriate schools. We do not send those for you. Each one of these organizations also comes equipped with resources that you can be taking advantage of for studying purposes. So the College Board is connected to Khan Academy, and the ACT is connected to Kaplan. When you register for these accounts, they're going to have you create a profile, they're going to give you access to those resources, and those are things that you can be actively doing to hopefully get you the stronger score that you're looking for. We also have some free resources right on the North Andover High School Library website. We can walk you through that, or Mrs. Harrington can help you with that as well. If you are a student who receives accommodations like extra time and you're looking for that when it comes to standardized testing, please come see your guidance counselor so we can help you with that process. The big question on everybody's mind, You know, a lot of colleges are test optional at this point. Should you be taking them? We in the guidance office recommend that you take at least one of these exams once at the bare minimum. Some schools, and every school is going to require different things from you, and some majors may require the SATs where others don't, or the ACTs. So making sure that you have some scores available to you so you're not limited in your options. The difference, I just want to go over the difference between the SAT and ACT2. There's not a big difference, to be honest. It's a lot of the same content that you're going to be tested on in both exams. The biggest difference is the ACT has a scored science content section. The SATs is math and English. This next slide is the testing dates for you. This is an opportunity, and this will be on our website. We can help you get this information as well, but for you to start planning when you want to take those exams. A lot of our students take the exam at least twice, and in between taking it the first time and the second time, we're using those resources to better their score, or taking the advantage of the extra math class in the spring that you're going to be taking. But the SAT and ACT alternate months for the most part. Once you've taken an exam, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get your scores back, so you can make a plan if you want to take them again. Whether you send your scores or not is going to vary on the programs that you're applying to for majors, the specific colleges you're applying to, and potentially if that is going to be a school that's going to help you get merit money with a test score. So we won't know those answers quite yet, but again, having the options available so you can send them to the places that you need to or want to is important. The last thing I wanted to mention is we are an SAT test site. We are offering the SATs here at the North Andover High School in March. We typically offer it again in the fall, but we 1,000% are already on the College Board website for the SATs this March. If you are interested in taking it at your home school, I encourage you to get on top of that sooner rather than later. We usually are at max capacity for that testing site. Any questions for the SAT or ACT? Yeah. Yep, juniors should be taking the SATs or ACTs, whether it's the spring of their junior year, or if you want to wait and get more math under your belt, or take more time to study and practice, you can take it in the summer or the fall of your senior year as well. But we will be having it here at the high school in March. Yeah. Absolutely. We do have students who take it in March and then say, hey, I'm going to take it again in June. It is kind of nice to have a score under your belt before you head into the summer when you're going to be working on your application actively. Yeah. That's a really good question. You have control over what scores you send. There are schools that you might have a higher math score on one test and a higher English, and combined, the schools will super score them, so you might want to send both. But if you have one higher test score and it's going to show the college that you're a really good candidate for their program, then you'll send the one test score. You can also choose which schools see it. If you have 5 schools on your list and you only want to send it to one, you only send it to the one. Yep. The ACT still has an essay. It is optional. You do not have to take the ACT with the essay. The SAT no longer has an essay, and they also don't do the subject test anymore. So if you had older children or you're remembering the wonderful experience for yourself, you don't have to worry about that anymore. If you are a student who went to that recruitment meeting earlier today, you might be encouraged to take the SAT a little earlier in the spring, so you have that score when you're talking to coaches and admissions offices. Yeah. No, and I think Drew and Joe talked about it a little bit. They won't see anything that you don't send them. So you can take the test 3 or 4 times, and if you only want to send one score, you'll send that one score. They never have to know you took it the other 3 times. And again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking it 3 or 4 times unless your student is actively working to improve that score. The college process can be pricey, and there are many steps to it. And there are a lot of other pieces to the puzzle, so being intentional and being mindful when you're planning out for a standardized testing is important. Yeah.
I think you said that, did you say you could take, say you took it in February, you took it again in May, and you had a higher English in February and then a higher math in May, you can split them?
You can't split them.
Can or
You cannot split the scores, but you can send both, and schools will take the highest and super score. But with that said, if you had a really low math score and you don't want them to see the low score, you might want to send just the highest composite score. Yeah. It is nice to have the science content scoring opportunity, but again, there's not a crazy difference between the content that's being tested other than that. If you have a real interest in science and you feel like you have a strong base and knowledge for that, then I certainly think it's worth taking it and saying, hey, that felt good, I did really well in the science, maybe you take it one more time so you can have a stronger score. So I think if you have that skill set and want to see how you do in that, it certainly doesn't hurt. Other questions? Yeah. Can you ask that again? I'm sorry. No, they'll look at them equally. The nice thing about the SAT is there's a lot more sites in this neighboring region. So if we don't offer it in May, Andover, Central might. So there's a lot more locations to take the SAT, but no, you could take either one and the colleges will accept that. Anybody else? Guys, it really was the most exciting topic of the evening. Thank you so much. Yeah, seriously, good luck.
Hi, I'm Megan Francis. There's so many websites out there, and I know it can be a little bit daunting to know where to go for some support. I've listed here a few that we use most often and that we recommend. The first is the North Andover High School Guidance website. There is the College Corner on there, and you will find this slideshow from tonight, and also a lot of the resources that we give to kids. So when we meet with them, we give them some handouts and mailings, and those will all be on that website. There's also links on this website to go to Naviance, which we'll talk about in a minute, and other links that we will direct the kids to at some point. So always a great place to start is our guidance website. College Board is a website where you will go to register for the PSATs, SATs, AP tests. And that also has some college search engines, some articles that I find pretty helpful. Common App is where students will go to apply to schools. Several thousand colleges will applications through the Common App, which is great. You get to fill out an application one time, and you can send that to all of your schools. Some colleges will require additional supplements and essays, but the bulk of the application can be done one time in the Common App, and then you can send it to your schools. Princeton Review is a website that I like. It has college search engines, it has articles, it has a lot of, check it out and see, it compares different colleges to one another. Always nice to try out some different search engines when starting the process and trying to find colleges to add to your list. And then next is Naviance. Naviance is a web-based platform that we use at the high school. I think we're very lucky to be able to use it. As I'll give you a very quick tour now and show you how to use it, I invite you all to play around on your own at home. I promise you cannot break it, so feel free to go through this and see all that it has to offer. We will be meeting with students and going through it in a little bit more detail with the kids and meeting with them one-on-one and sort of walking them through Naviance as well. The link can be found on the high school guidance website. There was a mailing sent home in the end of September that included a registration code for each student. It looks like about a third of juniors have registered so far. So if you have that packet somewhere in a kitchen cabinet, you may want to go home, pull that out, and find the registration code. When you hit on the link to Naviance, it's going to ask you for that code. If that has been recycled and nowhere to be found, please reach out to your student's guidance counselor. We will happily send you the code so you can get set up with your own username and password. All right, so when you log in, this is what it will look like. There's 3 tabs up top. So self-discovery. This has a lot of great assessments that you guys can take and to try to figure out. It's a really great starting point if you feel like you are very overwhelmed in the beginning of this process and don't really know what to do next. There's some interest inventories and career surveys. And when you start to take it, it will tell you approximately how long it will take. And then at the end, you will, it may suggest some careers that you may want to look into. So usually when I have a kid coming in, doe-eyed and having no idea what to do, I usually have them start here. The next tab is careers. Once you do that first round of career interest inventories, it will suggest some careers, and then you can come to this tab, and this will have more information for you. But this will probably be blank for you if you've not done the first part. In this process, it's going to be really tough for kids to answer these questions, such as, do you want a small school? Do you want to be in a large city? So as Drew mentioned earlier, start going to visit some schools now, and you'll be able to make some decisions for yourself. So until you see schools, you probably won't really know what you want unless you're, the rare student who knows they want to go to school in this place and knows what major. Most kids are not there yet. I filled this out today based on where I would like to go if I was starting all over again. And it came up with 35 schools that they suggested that were a good fit for me. And then as you go through the schools, it can give you more information about the average GPA, how much it cost. If it's a school I want to look more into, I'm just going to favorite it. So you just click on that heart. So then next time when I go into Naviance, this heart right here, these are all of the colleges that I have hearted and I'm thinking about. Also, you can go to search for colleges and just add a school that you may know of. And then that will show up here. So at this point in the school year, I usually encourage my students to start making a very large list and putting it on Naviance. You can remove them once you learn more about what you're looking for and whether that school has it or not. And then this Compare Me button I think is kind of fun. You can see these are the GPAs from students from North Andover High School and whether they were accepted or not accepted to the college based on their GPA. So some of these schools right here, you'll see the green checks. That means that my GPA is lower than the average did to that college. If there's a red X, by no means does that mean you should stop looking at that school or you should not apply. It just means that your GPA is lower than the average student from North Andover High School. So information is power. I think this tool is super helpful so you know when you're going into the process what what students have been accepted to which schools. Okay. Another fun tab is College Match. So this will take the list, schools on the list that I just showed you, and it will show me where students typically apply if they have schools that are on my list. So Champlain College was on my list, and so this gives me some schools that students also apply to who apply to Champlain College. So now it's a process just adding schools to the list. Once you start to learn about what you are looking for, by the fall, then you're going to start narrowing down your list to schools that you actually want to attend. All right? And one more of my favorite tabs is called Scattergrams. I am a visual person, so this is a fun tab to check out if you, like me, like to just see pictures. All right, let me find, let's do UMass Lowell. Okay. So these is a visual of students who have applied to UMass Lowell from North Andover High School. Those with green checks were accepted to the college. The red X's were denied, and the purple circles were deferred. This blue circle right here, this is where I am based on the GPA and SAT scores that I put in here for myself. So you guys will be in blue. And you can see that several kids around me are green, and there are also some that are around me that are red. But based on this data, I would probably apply and be optimistic and hopeful that I get accepted to this college. So it's a good place to start if you just want to look and see, like, oh, what are my chances of getting in? There's obviously several other things that colleges are looking for, but I think that's a nice place to start. And this is Navient. So you guys can all register. There's a lot of other tabs that you may be interested in, so feel free to look around with that. And then I know Joe talked about this a little bit earlier, but we've seen a lot of an increase as well in applications. I think part of it is the Common App makes it very easy. I think when kids get a little anxious about not getting accepted, it's very simple, almost too simple to just add another school to your list. Kids never believe me when I tell them this, but a problem that you don't really want is when you're accepted to all your schools, and I have kids every year who apply to up to 20, then you're faced with trying to choose which school in your senior year, and they all start to kind of blend together. So what we recommend is you doing the research in your junior year, trying to figure out which schools are right for you. And I invite you to sort of shift your thinking in you are choosing a school. Schools aren't choosing you. So spend some time really thinking about what it is you want in a school, where you want to spend your time, and then find schools that are accessible, affordable, and desirable. I often hear kids tell me about schools they're adding to the list, and I ask the very simple question, do you want to go there? And you wouldn't believe how many times kids say, nah, but they start to feel a little bit panicked. So that is unnecessary. We're here to help with that now and for this year and next year to try to avoid some of that panic. Colleges, it's expensive to apply to schools. And there's also, every college has different parts they're looking for. And when you have 20 schools on your list, that becomes really overwhelming and it's hard to manage. It's impossible to go in an interview with all of those schools and to send perfectly edited letters and supplements to all of those schools. It really becomes a lot. So my advice is to do the legwork in your junior year with the help of your guidance counselors, and we can try to find you a list that feels appropriate to apply in the fall of your senior year. All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Demonstrated interest. So demonstrated interest is essentially how colleges assess how likely it is that students are interested in their college. Colleges and college reps have mentioned time and time that they use demonstrated interest to determine how likely it is that students will attend their college if they were to be admitted. They like to see that students are taking every opportunity to interact with them, whether it is through college tours, talking to college reps, or even just sending a simple thank you email whenever you're talking to them. They like keeping track of this and they keep data. And they use this data sometimes to essentially go through or look at your college application. So it's important to start showing this interest, and some of the ways includes going on college fairs. Some of our college fairs, well, we don't offer college fair here, but nearby we have Phillips Andover and PPD High who invite all our students to attend. So if you have the opportunity to, I definitely recommend it. We also at the high school invite college college reps to come to our school to present on their school. This gives you the chance to not only learn more about them, but also meet the person who will be reading your college application. So it's a good opportunity to do that. Juniors and seniors are encouraged, and you can sign up through an ambiance. College visits. Juniors have 3 documented college visit days, and seniors are given 5 days. As long as you fill out a form and turn it into us 2 days prior, those days will be documented and it won't count towards your attendance. This pretty slideshow shows different types of college campuses, but we definitely encourage, like so many of us have said all night long, going on college campuses are the most important thing that'll help you determine where you want to go to college. Not only are you trying to decide what you don't like, do like, you're also trying to see like if you can see if this college is the right fit for you. So whether that is, well, food is very important to me, so when I go on college campus, I'm gonna be visiting every dining hall and trying every food that I can get my hands on, or how many libraries that they offer or have on campus. I think things like that you need to be on campus to realize you like or you don't like. And like Drew and Joe said, start anywhere. So like, you're not gonna know until you visit a random college and then you start narrowing down what you like or you don't like. And then even if you get the chance to, definitely sit in any classes or go to games, or even find a bench to just sit and people watch. I visited BC once before I applied, and I was able to find out that one of the dining hall has the best sandwiches, and that's where I went all 4 years. So things like that you have to keep in mind, right? Next slide. And when you're on these college visits, make sure you're asking the right questions. You're gonna be your tour guide's most likely a student, and these students have the information that college admission or college rep don't have. So like asking them what classes are like, or how are dorms, like what dorm should if I go here, what dorm should I try to get into? Things like that these people will be able to give you some key information. So some of these are the questions that you should think about when you're asking these questions, but definitely not limited to.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is recommendations. So first, starting off with the teacher recommendations. Each college that you're looking at is going to be looking for something slightly different. So when you are building your college list, you're going to want to also pay attention to what they're asking you for your application. Some may only want one recommendation, some may be asking for a couple. Some may be wanting specifically one from a teacher and one from maybe someone from outside of school, like an employer. So you want to pay attention to that and make sure that you're asking the right people. But I think in general, you want to plan to ask maybe 1 to 2 teachers for recommendations. And what we always recommend is that students approach those teachers and ask them if they would be willing to write those recommendations in the spring of their junior year. So you want to be going into summer vacation, having already had those conversations face-to-face with those teachers. And when you come back in the fall of your senior year, that's when you want to go back to those teachers, check in with them, make sure that they have everything that they need from you, and then also making sure you're confirming your college deadlines with those teachers, so it's in the front of their mind when you need them to have those recommendations done by. It's also not uncommon for teachers to ask you for a little bit more information when you ask them for recommendations. So they may ask you just to send them an email with what you're considering majoring in or studying in college, what some of your interests are, just to get a better sense of you both in and out of the classroom so they can write you a well-rounded letter. And then for your counselor recommendation, so the guidance counselors at the high school here, they do write recommendations for every single one of their seniors, so you do not need to ask them for permission or if they'd be willing to do that. But what you do need to do is on the Naviance website, there will be a student recommendation form that you can fill out and should fill out. And that's going to be similar to what the teachers would be kind of looking for, but in greater detail, asking you about your interests, what you think your strengths are as a student, what you're involved in, so that they can make sure to include that in your letters of recommendation. But also there will be a parent recommendation form on Naviance that is totally optional, but can also be helpful for the counselors to get just a different perspective on your student, similar types of questions, but kind of hearing from you on what you believe your students' strengths are and what you think they would excel in is also helpful for them to see. So next we'll talk about the application types. I know that Joe and Drew talked a lot about this when they were talking to us earlier, so I will just review it. Starting with the early decision first. So that was the binding application that they were talking about, meaning that you get to have one active early decision application at a time. If you apply early decision and get accepted, you are saying that you agree to go to that school without knowing what your financial aid situation is or anything like that. So we really recommend it if it's the top school, the one you've always been dreaming of, and you know you're going to be able to go there, whether or not the whatever the financial aid situation comes to be later on. Then you have early action, which is not binding. So typically the deadlines for that are in November 1st or 15th is usually the deadlines for that, but some can be as early as mid-October, which is why we encourage you guys to get started on stuff sooner rather than later. And then we have regular decision. Those deadlines are typically anytime January 1st to March 15th, so a bit more time on those. And then rolling admissions, as Joe mentioned too, the nice thing about those is the sooner that you apply, the sooner you'll hear back. Something to keep in mind though is once you have a general idea of what you're looking to study, you want to make sure that you're looking at the deadline for that specific program of study as well. So an example of that might be nursing. A lot of times those are really competitive programs in the area, and even though the school itself may have regular decision deadlines later in the school year, their nursing program specifically may go off of the early action deadlines. So you would need to have the stuff in much earlier than you think. So it's definitely important to consider that when applying.
Hi everyone. This is about the time of the night that people start to feel a little overwhelmed. It's normal if you're feeling that way. It just means you're doing it right. We are really condensing a year and a half into kind of 2 hours for you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual application. I'm not going to go into a ton of depth because it's really not something you need to be worried about just yet. It is coming, but what you really want to start doing now is the exploration phase. Okay, so getting organized is really going to be the biggest tip for you. You know, through this process you've heard about, okay, I got to schedule my testing, I have to go on college visits, I got to start this process. Really starting to get organized, writing things down, that's going to really start to help you. What's fun about the college process, and it is supposed to be fun, is that every school is a little bit different. And so some schools might you might have to do 1 recommendation. Some schools might require 2 recommendations. Some schools you might get to do an interview, some schools maybe don't have that. So it's really important to start that process now, start your research, start getting organized, because that's gonna help you feel less stressed in the fall of senior year. So like, for example, Syracuse requires 2 teacher recommendations. Villanova only lets you send 1. There's little minutia that you're gonna come into later on in the process that I don't want you to be stressed out about now, but just really start to get organized as you're beginning this process. Okay, so the application itself. There's 2 real applications. The Common App is what we're going to talk about the most. It's what you're going to hear the most. The Common App accepts, I believe it's over 900 schools will take the Common App. Okay, so that's really where you're going to be spending most of your time. What do you do if your school that you're interested in doesn't accept the Common App? It's pretty simple. Basically, you're going to go to that school's website and fill out their school-specific app. Okay? A lot of times, I don't want kids to be deterred by that. I'll have kids that say, oh, I'm not applying there because I don't feel like doing another application. Don't get lazy. Like, this is your future. You're planning this. Like, keep your options open. A lot of times, too, those school-specific apps are shorter than the Common App, so they're not as hard, and you probably already have your so you can just use the same one, okay? So in terms of the application itself, kids get a little nervous to start it, and we'll talk about when you should start it, which is not now, okay? Right now, you're doing the application process. Am I listening? Yeah, I'm still good, okay. So the application basically is like a resume of your activities from 9th grade through 12th grade. It's everything you've done. Clubs, activities, sports, drama, music. If you're someone who has a job, colleges love kids who have a job. Those are all going to be on the application. It's the one time that, they talked a lot about the academic piece. This is the other side. What are the things that interest you that you can show college admissions officers? So that's going to be a big part of what's on the application. There's no question on the application that you don't know the answer to. I think the most stressful part is probably the essay, which Drew talked about at length, so I won't go into that too much. But really, you know everything, so take your time with it. We've been doing this for a very long time. It's normal for kids to fill out their Common App, and before they send it, make an appointment with us, and so we can go through it with you, and with a fine-tooth comb, make sure it looks really good. It's exactly how you want it to be, so you're putting your best self forward. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, okay. So after you put down your information, your grades, what classes you've taken, what sports, activities, clubs, if you're sitting there thinking, crap, I don't have any of that stuff, it's not too late, but you're going to want to start doing that now. Join a club. Try something new. You don't have to do 1,000 different things. Pick a few things that are really important to you that show what you're interested in. That's going to really shine through on your application and make a bigger impact than doing 1,000 things one time, right? On top of that, so you'll fill out all of that. Next comes supplements. So what is a supplement? A supplement is just going to be, each school is going to have their own specific questions. So you're going to fill out your Common App, and that's one application. You can send it to over 900 schools. Please don't do that, but you can. Each school is going to have their own specific questions. Sometimes it's an extra essay. Sometimes it's just a few short answer questions. Those are called the supplements. The reason why I just want to tell you about them now is kids get really nervous about writing their essay. They finish it, yes, I'm done, I'm ready to hit apply, and then they go to the supplemental questions and they're like, oh, there's another essay, or this one says optional. Hint, it's never optional. If they offer you an opportunity to write a second one, please do it. But it does take a little bit of time, so that, remember we talked about being organized. Setting up that timeline and not waiting last minute to fill those out are going to be important. On top of that, recommendations, we kind of talked about that. We recommend that you ask two teachers for that, just so you have them. And Drew talked a lot about the essay. So here's the thing, when do I apply? I don't really want students to be thinking about filling out the application right now. Do the exploration phase. You're going to want to start the application, I think, over the summer. August 1st is a great day to sign up for Common App and start filling out your application. You won't be submitting it till the earliest is probably October, so you'll have plenty of time to fill it out, come into the fall, and have us check it over for you before you send it. We can answer any questions, but it's a great time. I also think that students should be writing their essay over the summer, or at least do a draft over the summer. That way you can come in the fall, it's less stressful, it's senior year, you're gonna have 7 classes, you're gonna be applying to colleges, having a draft of your essay done so that we can read it or your English teacher can read it to give you some advice and feedback, use your summer time wisely. Follow the timeline that was given to you. We break down the 2 years for a reason so you don't get too overwhelmed. And if you get overwhelmed, you call our office and we set up an appointment, we meet with you and help you. Okay, we're on the same team here. Last little preview. You've filled out your applications. You're hitting apply. How the heck does your transcript get there and your teacher recommendations? That's the transcript release form. So we require students to fill this out for any school that they're applying to. So in the fall, if you have a November 1st deadline, we ask that you fill in your transcript release form 30 days before your first deadline. You don't have to put every school you're applying to if you have some schools that have early and some that are regular, but the ones that you know for sure, get those in 30 days before the first deadline. On that form is the name of the school, the deadline, who you asked to write recommendations for you. You are responsible for sending your application and your test scores if required. We send everything else. We'll send your teacher recs. We'll send our recommendation. We'll send your transcript. The only way we know how to do that, where to send it and by when, is if you fill out that transcript release form. Okay? So the biggest takeaway is honestly for you guys tonight, exploration, get the process started. Start asking people questions, start getting on campuses, and when things pop up, reach out. We know what we're doing. We've done it for a long time, so we really want a kind of partnership with you, and we want to make the process exciting and fun for you, as much as it can be.
All right, so financial aid, the part we don't help you guys with as much. So there are different parts of the financial aid process. We will help guide you guys through that, but because it is totally your finances, we don't dive into it as much as we do with the rest of the application. So the main components of the financial aid process are grants and scholarships. So those parts of the application, those parts of financial aid, you guys do not have to pay back. So if schools are giving you grants, if they're giving you scholarships, that's kind of free money. So you guys don't have to pay that back. Loans, you guys will have to pay the loans back, whether you guys break it down over years, semesters, however the financial aid department sets that up for you. There's merit money, so that's also free money. You don't necessarily have to apply for that based on the transcripts that you guys send in and your grades. The higher your grades are, grade point average. If schools offer merit money, they're going to give you that. And again, you don't have to pay that back. There's also work study. So work study allows students to on campus, paid positions that can help pay for their tuition and their costs. Again, that you don't have to pay back. So there are 2 major financial aid applications. The FAFSA, it's a federal application. It opens up in October, so as students are filling out their application, parents can start to create the account for financial aid. In the past, students had to create a different application than the parents, and then they would combine. Right now, one of you guys will fill out the application and link it by social security number. What was I just going to say? That is federal money. Some schools, the earlier you apply, the better off you are. Again, you can't apply before October 1st. Some schools will run out of the money, so you want to apply on the earlier end, or at least by the deadline that the schools are offering for the application deadlines. The other application is the CSS profile. That can also be found on the College Board website. Not every school accepts the CSS profile. And from what I understand when speaking with parents and speaking with the schools, they ask way more information about your finances than the federal financial aid asks you guys. Schools will say that even if you don't think that you qualify for financial aid money, you should be applying, because private schools can give you some of their own money that the federal government may or may not give you. So applying for both of them is definitely beneficial to families. The CSS profile, kids kind of freak out because there's no deadline really for the FAFSA. CSS will say that they want it by the earliest deadline, So then kids freak out and they're like, oh my God, I didn't do it, I can't turn it in. Every school that we have called will accept it. It's not going to make or break your acceptance if you send this financial aid in a little bit later than the deadline. Again, another good resource is the guidance website. Some of the stuff on there. We have, which I found out today, there are a ton of links to help with, actually, if we click on the next one. So MIFA, they offer financial aid websites or webinars. So if you want to hear a repeat of today from a different perspective, they offer a college admissions one. But one of the good ones, I put the earliest deadlines only on there, but there are some in the later spring. When you're applying for financial aid, if you want financial aid 101, they can dive into it a little bit more than we are able to. They can answer some of your specific questions. Again, understanding financial aid, families are finding these beneficial, and like Drew and Andrew said, some of the perks of COVID are the online webinars. So going back to the high school guidance website, some of the good things on there are a ton of links to local and federal financial aid agencies that can help answer some of the questions for financial aid. But also on there, there are local scholarships and national scholarships that, even though we're talking a lot about senior year, you guys are going to do a lot of the stuff, you guys can start looking for scholarship opportunities now. Some of them you can apply for as juniors. Even if you can't apply until senior year, we offer the same scholarships next year. So kind of researching. Debbie Conti will go on and update that website when we get some applications or some scholarships, kind of finding out what you qualify for. There's different ones based on if you want to go to school to be a doctor, if you're a female, if you want to go into education. So there's different ones listed on there. It doesn't hurt to check it out. And then there's also local scholarships that come out. Right now, the current seniors, it opens up for them in February. Again, for you guys, when you start looking, that will open up for you in February. That's based on local agencies in the community, whether it's banks, the elementary school that you guys went to. It's only for North Andover High School students. So that, again, is down the road, but kind of researching what scholarships you guys might qualify for right now, so you don't have to do it later on, in addition to everything else you guys are already doing.
So as you can see, there's a lot to this process, but we want to make it manageable. We want to break it down. So you have some of the bigger action items listed here. They're also listed on that timeline that we shared. And if anyone didn't get a copy of that on your way in tonight, we can make sure you get that before you leave. The biggest things that you can control right now in your junior year and what you should be thinking about right now, today, tomorrow, are your academics, right? You control what goes on your transcript. So, and like Drew and Joe said, the bulk and sort of the starting point or the cake of the admissions process is sort of what is included in your academic record. So you can control that. You still have half a year in junior year and a full senior year to control what goes into your GPA, what classes you choose next year as a senior, how you do the second half of the year this year. So kind of being in control of that. If you're looking at your list of extracurriculars and you're realizing that there are holes there, find some things to get involved with, figure out what you're passionate about, and kind of find some ways to bulk up that part of your application. So those are the things you really want to be focusing on for yourself today, tomorrow, and the immediate future, is having a really successful senior year. The other major action items that you want to be considering are making sure that if you're needing to take the SATs or ACTs, that you're signing up for at least 1 to 2 of those administrations this spring. You're asking those teachers for letters of recommendation this spring. And you know that your counselor is going to be meeting with you this spring to kind of start talking about a college list. So kind of doing some exploration, going to see some college campuses. We live in a really great place in terms of accessibility to college campuses. I don't know if you know, there's a college campus right here in town. Go look at it. Even if you would never actually attend Merrimack, it's a suburban, small to medium-sized school. There's hundreds of those other places. So even if you wouldn't choose Merrimack College, your counselor can recommend other schools that have that same feel other places. So it's a great opportunity. Go look at UMass Lowell, go look at Salem State, go look at Endicott. You know, and those are all within less than 25 minutes from North Andover. So just some really important things for you to kind of be thinking about in sort of getting started in this process. The other thing is, everyone is nervous about it. No one knows what to do, and that's okay. Come and talk to us. Come and ask us. We will happily answer the same question 100 times if that's how long it takes for you guys to understand what you need to understand. Okay? That's what we're here for. Now that you've sort of heard the process from beginning to end, what questions can we answer for you as you guys leave here with next steps?
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it will be posted on the website. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's also going to be, there's a live stream link, so if you want to hear the presentation again, you can watch that too. It's hurtful, but okay. Yeah.
Just wondering if the students get to see their recommendation letters from the teachers that they ask for, but just go through the guidance.
Great question. So the counselors' recommendations that we write are closed. There's going to be, most teachers, they're also closed, meaning they just upload them into Naviance and don't give them to their students. When you submit the FERPA, which is a component of the application, you either have to waive your right to see your materials or not. And basically what that means is if you retain your right, you could access your letters of recommendation down the road, but they're not something that we give to students automatically. And the reason for that is that the next question on the FERPA is on the understanding that like a student may then have influence on what is written in a recommendation, so they really want more uninfluenced recommendations. I've been doing this for 17 years. I've never seen a poor recommendation sent on behalf of a student, so we can guarantee that they're all positive and well-meaning and all of that, so that's usually something that we see them as well. Questions? Yes? Oh yeah, absolutely, and they can see when things are sent. So you can see it through the Common App, you can see them through Naviance, you can ask your teachers, you can come down to our offices and we can tell you when things have been sent. So it's all very, because everything is electronic now, it's very transparent when things are sent and received. Absolutely. Other questions? Yeah. No, it'll just be on the guidance website. Yeah, definitely. So there's several different types of assessments that exist in Naviance. Mrs. Francis touched on them a little bit. They're under the About Me tab or the Discoveries, right? Self-discovery tab. A lot of them, if you start looking at them, they're formulated after different social psych assessments. So there's like a Myers-Briggs personality inventory. There's a Holland Codes test. So they're named different things, but if you've ever taken a Psych 101 course, you're going to look at those and see very clearly that they're strength-based assessments that either talk about how your interests would then correlate to potential majors or different fields of work, how your learning styles do the same thing, and they kind of link different colleges that would then have those majors and all those kind of things. So a multitude of self-assessments in there. Other questions? Great. Well, we thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it, and we wish you the best of this process.